Hey guys, new video for Path of Exile. So this video is going to be the last one in the series, probably for this league. We're going to be doing a champion build this time, not a Pathfinder, so sorry for those of you guys who wanted to see a Pathfinder build, but I think the build we're doing today is probably best suited on a champion. We're going to be doing a build using a Incandescent Heart, along with the Divine Flesh from the Timeless Jewel, to basically convert 75% of our elemental damage to chaos, and then we're going to mitigate that quite a bit with the Armor and Energy Shield Mastery, with armor applies to chaos damage taken from hits. Usually on these kind of setups, you see people are using like the fourth vow and that kind of stuff to, along with the, this Divine Flesh notable, and this time we're using Incandescent Heart, and the reason for that, this is, well, fourth vow is pretty good on its own. You don't really have to invest much into max chaos res, like just being at 80 chaos res with fourth vow is usually enough like mitigation, and doesn't really scale that much. You know, if you get a lot more armor, it doesn't really add that much more max hit. Getting more max chaos res does add a little bit, but not all that much. But the downside to fourth vow is that, you know, 50% of your elemental damage isn't really being mitigated by the armor, and all of that is also, you know, vulnerable to you being like the elemental damage being penetrated and that kind of stuff, for example with like Shaper or Atziri and that kind of stuff. So you end up taking quite a lot of elemental damage still, even though 50% of that is fully being covered by your armor. So with Incandescent Heart, the nice thing about this is it does scale a lot better with the amount of armor you have, but it does require you to have a lot more max chaos res to be more effective. So today we're going to show two different setups on the champion, basically one with just two swords. With two swords, I am only at about 84 chaos res, and with this shield that I made here, we'll be at 89%. So at 89%, you're very tanky. It's pretty much almost the same kind of level of damage reduction as Unbreakable, which is pretty cool. And with the swords, two swords, it's still pretty good, and it is like deceivingly tanky because of the penetration aspect. So like I could do the Feared in a Valdo's map with two swords and be okay, because all of the penetration, all that kind of stuff doesn't really happen. Well, I mean it does, but only on 25% of the damage you take, so it ends up being pretty strong like that. So this build concept can actually be used on pretty much any Ascendancy, which is quite cool. You can do it on a Scion, you can do it on, I even did a PoB for a Witch. You can go check that out in the Armor Stacker Compendium. You can do it on Guardian, you can do it on pretty much any Ascendancy and get it running with this type of defense, and it is pretty nice. I think overall, this kind of setup with Incandescent Heart and Divine Flesh definitely is a lot better than the fourth vow versions of the build. Only downside is that there isn't really that much endgame scaling potential, mainly because, well, there's two reasons. First of all, you can't really use a Grasping Mail, so you're missing out on quite a lot of extra stats that you would get from the body armor, like the aura effect implicits, and then also a helmet, right? So you can't use a gem level helmet. You're kind of locked into Formless Flame, so that just kind of cuts out a lot of endgame scaling potential that you would have. Another reason is, like I mentioned, we do need to raise our max chaos res. So if you really do want to be very, very tanky, then you're probably going to want to use a shield, and then that means you're going to lose a lot of damage. And then you also are going to need to use either a Megalomaniac with Born of Chaos, or you can just get it on a small cluster Born of Chaos here, which gives you +3 max chaos res. Now you can also get it on a Timeless Jewel. The Timeless Jewel can have nodes that have like +1 to max chaos res, and get a little bit there, but these Timeless Jewels can also roll aura effect, so I prefer just to get the aura effect. See, this one here has about 34% increased aura effect on it. And I guess, yeah, you could get some max chaos res here if you wanted, but it's only 1% per node, whereas the small cluster here is 3%. So I think it's better just to sacrifice 10% aura effect on your cluster here and then grab a lot more on the Timeless Jewel, but you can mix and match it, and get like aura effect, and then get some max chaos res and stuff like that. So basically, yeah, because you have to drop small clusters for introspection, for Born of Chaos, that means that you're losing out on potential aura effect or these other small little nodes here that do make quite a bit of difference. You can see we're getting fire resistance, all elemental resistance, and mana reservation. So it's sort of like a medium budget build, I would say. You can't really scale it that far. Right, so as for content, this character has done, let's see, we've done Uber bosses. Uber bosses were totally fine. I did an Uber Cirrus, Uber Eater, Exarch, that kind of stuff. And those bosses, totally fine. Took them down pretty easily. This time around, I'm using Smite of Divine Judgment again. So the same setup with Smite of Divine Judgment in my body armor, and then the normal Smite in my boots, so I can get the buff from the aura. Now you can, if you're just lazy, you can just run normal Smite in your body armor, so you don't have to actually use it on your boots, but you will be losing out on quite a bit of damage. So if you do want the damage, then, well, you do have to push the extra button, and it's not like you really have to do it all the time, right? Like if you're just doing maps, most of the time you can just use normal Smite without even getting the buff from the boots, and you'll still kill pretty much everything. And then just use Smite whenever you encounter a boss or a very, very tanky rare mob. Alright, so let's do some showcases. So first one we're going to do is the Eater of Worlds. Now I was quite surprised that this character can actually tank the explosion from the Eater of Worlds with the shield setup, right? So with two swords it does end up killing you, but with a shield like this and having right now 89 chaos res, we can actually tank this ability and actually survive, which is kind of crazy. Alright, so let's kill him off. So damage is actually like pretty bad, I'd say, with just a shield setup. It does take a little bit of time, we gotta get our frenzies, get the elemental overload, and that kind of stuff. But, definitely pretty good tank-wise. You're able to pretty much take all of his hits. And you don't really need to use Molten Shell at all, actually. Well, if you want to tank the explosion, then you probably do need it. But yeah, let's go and kill him off. Hopefully he does his little explosion thing so we can sort of see it in action. Maybe we'll just wait a bit and wait for him to do it. Oh no. Man, these balls are so annoying. Alright, let's see. You see, actually does like no damage. It's kind of funny, right? But yeah, let's just use our... Well, I use my flask, but they always seem to do that, right? As soon as I use my flask and my ball skills, they do some like phase thing. But let's do that again and just kill them off. There we go. Alright, so that was with the shield setup. You can see, so damage is quite slow. I think we're at like about 40-50 million DPS with the shield setup. But let's try a feared Valdo map so you guys can see what it's like. Alright, so for this map, we're going to be using two swords. So you can see a dual sword setup in action. And I don't really have everything actually changed because ideally you want to use a dual wielding cluster like this. And I'm still using my shield cluster over here, which is not really doing much, except for martial prowess, I guess. Alright, so here we are. It's the feared, and this one actually has monsters kill things with 20% or lower life. So that means if we ever get to 20% life, we're just going to die. Hopefully that doesn't happen. So, like I was saying before, basically all you have to do is, you don't really have to even use the smite. You see I don't even have the smite buff. And you can just run around with Smite of Divine Judgment and just kind of whack things, right? These kind of like normal monsters and maps. And you definitely have enough damage to where you don't even have to push it. And only if you, run into some kind of tanky monster or that kind of stuff. Then you push your smite buff. You don't even really need to push Grace. You can see, I don't even have Grace active and I'm still just like killing everything off. So, very lazy. You don't even really need to even push your buffs until you run into a situation where there is a tanky mob, like this guy, right? Alright, let's find these guys, because maybe they're around here. Alright, here they are. So we want to be very careful for this degen, and we'll just kill off the Shaper and Atziri. Alright, they're all dead. Because, yeah, this character doesn't have a lot of ES or life regen, so we do want to be sort of careful for those kind of stings. And our Fizz mitigation isn't really the best either, so avoid the big Fizz hits. And let's kill them off. Alright, it's pretty easy. Alright, well, that was kind of fast, so how about we just try one more, exact same map. Alright, so here they are. Let's go in and try to one-shot them. Gotta first find the Shaper. There he is. So use our kind of ball skills and go kill him off. Didn't die right away this time, but yeah, pretty much. Yeah, with Smite, you do have to actually stand correctly, right? So you want to be able to stand like maybe here if the target's here, so that you actually do get the double hits. Otherwise, you're not going to be getting the area and melee hit from Smite. And on Smite of Divine Judgment, the area hit is doing a lot more damage than the actual melee hit. So you want to make sure you're standing, you know, a little bit away from the target to get max damage. Otherwise, it's kind of like you're doing half damage, basically. Alright, so let's try a back to basics map. This map is going to be a +4 proj with like barrels, and then it also has like crit. So it might be a little bit, you know, rippy, especially with the 2 sword setup, but let's try it anyways and see what happens. Alright, let's see how bad the crit roll is. Oh my god, 2000 crit chance. Okay. But a lot of currency in scarabs. So hopefully we just kill them before they kill us. Now this just does have a lot of AoE too. Guess we will loot all this stuff later. And it is a little bit sketchy, I'd say, with the shield doing this kind of setup. Probably should swap over to the shield setup so we get that extra mitigation. Hey, Divine Orb. Alright, so at the boss, wish me luck guys. If we die, we'll come back with this shield set up and finish her off. She does have increased AoE, so that could be kind of problematic, maybe. Let's see. Hopefully we can just kill her off before she does too many things. Our abilities, and yeah. Holy shit. Oh, that's the saw blades. Gotta watch out for those things. But I think we can actually do this with the two swords. The saw blade things, they leave this kind of like degen on the ground, which is a little bit problematic. Alright. Just watch out for the saw blades. Alright, I think it's time to go over to the shield, guys. Alright, finish them off. So let's just use our burst and kill her off. Like, even with the shield, we are still doing like considerable damage. Oh, watch out for those. And yeah, that is the boss. I probably could have even done it on the two swords if you just play better and don't get hit by those saw blades. Alright, so let's go into the build and how we're building it. Alright, so first of all, let's go into PoB real quick so we can see some stats. Alright, so this is the character using the two swords setup. Now, if we did use a shield, you can see our max hit is about 150k or so on Elemental. With Molten Shell off, it's about 68. So this is actually quite a lot more noticeable difference to something like a, let's just say if we added a fourth vow. You can see it's actually quite a lot better, about 12% better than a fourth vow. And this is quite a lot more noticeable when Molten Shell is off. You can see with Molten Shell off, only 45k or 40k or so max hit, versus the Incandescent Heart. With Molten Shell off, it's actually a 50% increase in our max hit we can take. So this setup definitely quite a lot better. And once you do have a shield and you have like the proper cluster over here, you can see without Molten Shell, we're almost at 90k or like 85, 90k max hit compared to a fourth vow, where we'd still be at like 50k, right? So the Incandescent Heart definitely quite a lot more survivability than a fourth vow setup. Alright, so you can see the numbers over here, almost similar to a Juggernaut using Unbreakable, which is quite insane. Armor on close to 3 million armor with the shield set up, and then about 50 mil DPS with the shield, and with the other sword over here, we're at about 96 million, so basically 100 million DPS. Alright, so most important thing for this character, when you're setting it up, you do need capped Chaos Res, alright? So if you don't have capped Chaos Res, then this character's defense just goes out the window. So definitely get capped Chaos Res and as much max res as possible, like either with a shield setup, or with if you're just using two swords, then like you can see I was at like 84% max res and was still pretty much okay for most things, right? But if you do want to go for the max tank route, then get one of these shields. There is also another shield you can use if you don't want to craft one of these. I'll go over how I crafted it later on. But it's the Sappho's frame, basically, that gives you +4 to all maximum resistances. So that's actually a very nice, cheap alternative you can use. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Get high chaos res, get high max res, and get a lot of armor, because this setup does scale a lot better with armor. Okay, so let's go over the gear real quick, right? So we're using a sword, nothing really crazy here, replica dream feather, and then for the helmet, formless flame, so we can scale our armor values from our overcap fire resistance, right? So we're getting increased armor. It's quite a bit over here because we have about 780% increase fire resistance. After that, basically Incandescent Heart, we already went over this. Really nice to get the +1 to all maximum resistances, corruption on here, because this also gives you +1 chaos res. And then after that, for the amulet, I decided Defiance of Destiny because we don't have a lot of life regen. You can see a little under 1,500 life regen, and if I'm anywhere under like 2,500 or 3,000, then I don't really think it's enough regen. So you do need some other form of sustain, and that's why we're using the Defiance of Destiny. Otherwise, you could use a Ashes of the Stars or Voice of the Storm, also very good as well, if you want to get some more damage. And for the shield, so this shield here, you can get a Fractured +3 Chaos Res or Fractured +2 Maximum Res, and then I just used the Fire Essence for the fire resistance until I got the maximum res, and it's like 1 in 300, so not that bad. And then I just lock suffixes, reforge life, and then craft on the last mod. So actually very easy to craft this shield. And like I said, if you're on a budget, don't want to craft it, just get the Sappho's frame and you'll be good to go. There's some nice corruptions you can get on there as well, like Fizz taking us chaos and that kind of stuff. Alright, so ring, this is the same ring I used on my jug build, and basically here, all we want to do is get chaos res, fire resistance, life. That's pretty much it. All you really want on your ring. You can probably get some attributes too if you need them on the ring. I got some dex on my gloves, so if you don't have dex on your gloves, then maybe you have to get it on the ring. But you definitely need to get your chaos res somehow, and the ring is going to be the best slot. And then we're just going to use Glandrous Touch to mirror the ring, because it's cheaper than to make a new one. You could also fit in a Nimbus, right? If you want to do like a projectile skill, like Splitting Steel, Molten Strike, those kind of things. But it is going to be a little bit hard to get. Chaos Res is going to be hard to do. It is doable, but you're going to have to get a lot more Chaos Res from other places, and it's probably going to be on your small clusters. So you're going to have to get a lot more small clusters with, what do you call it, Chaos Res. Keep that in mind if you do one of those Nimbus kind of setups. Alright, so for the gloves, gloves here, evasion base, because evasion is flat evasion, very, very nice for Armor Stacker. And then we're just going to be crafting this. I used the Dex Essence because I needed Dex, so there's no attack speed on this pair of gloves. A little bit sad, but it is what it is. So Dex, Fire Resistance, Chaos Res, pretty much all you really need is Dex and Chaos Res. And then after that, I just did a Veiled Orb because it's, you know, YOLO, right? And I got it in 2 tries, so kind of funny. +2 AoE. Otherwise, just craft on +1 AoE and you're going to be fine. Belt, very nicely rolled Mage Blood over here. The Dex roll actually coming in quite nice because it is a little bit tight on Dex. But you can always get more Dex on small clusters, so not really the end of the world. And then we're just using a +7 March at Legion. And that's about it for the gear. For the flasks, okay, so I'm doing something a little bit different on the flasks. We have our just kind of standard base types, right? And then we have bleed immunity over here, and then elemental resistance and armor evasion. So since this build's defense really revolves around having high chaos resistance, if you ever get cursed with a very high level despair or something like that, you're going to be dropping a lot of chaos res. So one thing you could do is basically just get reduced effective curses on a flask, drop the evasion, increase evasion, take a little bit of hit on your armor. You see we're at almost 2.5 million armor, so we'll lose about 200k armor by doing this. But this is going to protect you from despair and other kind of elemental curses, because if you lose like 20 chaos res and you go to like 60 chaos res, you're probably going to get one shot. Right. Actually, withered wasn't as bad as it looks like. It's actually worse to get your resistance lowered than to get like 15 stacks of withered on you. So if you want to be really safe, then get some reduced effective curses, or, you know, really overcap your chaos res so that despair doesn't really do anything to you. While we're on the topic of flasks, let's go over some flasks. So if you want to move fast, basically what I do is I remove my Stib Knight for a Quicksilver. Right, and then we're going to be at 2 million armor, so we'll lose, you know, about 700k armor, but not the end of the world. This is still enough damage for most content, right? So aside from like Uber bosses or the Feared and that kind of stuff, you probably could just run a setup like this permanently with the Quicksilver. There's no real need for that much damage in, like, if you're doing T17 mapping or like some kind of maybe, you know, T17s. You might need the extra power, but for the most part, this should work, right? Unique flask, there's a couple of options I would recommend. So Vessel is really, really nice for damage, especially because we're using elemental focus, and the only shock we're going to get is from our smite in our boots. This actually does surprisingly shock for quite a bit. Like, I've gotten like up to like 20% shock just from this buff here, but it's not like super consistent. So if you want, so that's why Vessel, very nice. You just get 10% shock when you use it, and then the penetration is very nice. So probably the highest damage flask you can use. The downside doesn't really do anything because we are immune to shock. And then if you want to be a little bit more tanky, obviously go for a Progenesis flask over here, or a Taste of Hate to mitigate some physical damage. If there's a lot of fizz damage, you can mitigate some of that with this. And then otherwise a Bottled Faith. I guess Bottled Faith just gives you a little bit more regen and some damage, so a nice, you know, mix of some sustain and defense, but overall I think Vessel is a little bit better. Alright, so that is the gear. Let's go over some of the gems. Now most of these are pretty much self-explanatory, so we'll just kind of run through them. We have a mark set up for Poacher's Mark. The whole point of this is basically just to get frenzies on unique monsters. This also does give you life gain on a hit, which is actually quite nice. And then we have in the Formless Flame, we have our aura set up. Make sure your Purity of Fire gets to level 23 somehow. So put it in a +2 item like on your helmet, or I have it in my gloves too, so I can put it wherever I want. And for the main links, there's quite a few things you could do. I'm just doing the Smite Divine Judgment, and then Elemental Focus, Penetration, Multi-Strike, Wed, and then Volatility. That's kind of pretty much the best links you could use probably, but I mean, you could swap some out, right? You can get rid of Elemental Focus and add in Ruthless if you want to get some like big shocks on your with your Smite, so that could be kind of nice. And then for the March of Allegiance setup, so if you're going to be using Smite, like just normal Smite instead of Smite of Divine Judgment here, like say you're lazy, you don't want to have to push the extra button, then you can put your Defiance banner in the boots, and because Champion gets free banner, we get all the levels from the boots and like from the Empower on our Defiance banner, and it does give you a little bit extra armor. Right, and that's pretty much it. We have the Leap Slam, Molten Shell, and Precision, and that's sort of our links. Alright, so let's talk about the Ascendancy. So there's a couple of ways to do it, I think, and the main difference is, are you going to go for Permanent Fortify, or are you going to go for Conqueror and Worthy Foe? Alright, so what is the difference here? So the difference is, in the video, I'm running this Fortify setup, basically. The Fortify setup is just kind of, I don't know, it's okay, right? It's pretty easy to build. You don't really have to worry about stun immunity or getting Fortify on hit, that kind of stuff. So I think it is like maybe a cheaper option to do. But there's another thing we can do here, and the main benefit from Conqueror is that we take 10% reduced damage if we've taunted an enemy. So you can see we have 160k max hit taken if we've taunted an enemy recently, right? So that's quite a nice boost to our defense. And then enemies taunted by you take 20% increased damage and they can't evade. So basically that gives us free hit chance, right? If the enemy isn't taunted, then you can see we'll drop down to about 60% hit chance. So a little bit scuffed there. Maybe you even just do want to still run Precision just in case, right? So I'm not really sure. I'm not really that familiar with Champion and how this all plays out. In the video, I was doing a setup like this pretty much. You can experiment with this setup here, get a little bit more damage reduction. And this is kind of what the tree would look like here. Like this, we can drop the reservation over here. And then basically what you can do is you can add in Blood and Sand instead of Precision and get some extra damage, or you just add a totem, right? So that's a couple of ways to build the Ascendancy. I think this one might be better in the end because of the extra damage reduction, and it is actually a bit more damage, right? So that is something to consider. I'll have links for both of these in the Armor Stacker Compendium. You guys can go check out, see which one you like, and decide from there. Okay, as far as the rest of the Ascendancy, basically we're picking up some life, picking up some aura nodes. We do use a melding of the flesh over here, and then we're getting some large clusters. We'll go over, let's go over some of those. So we have one for Storm Drinker over here and Scintillating Idea. So the main node you want here is the Scintillating Idea. This is going to give you extra maximum mana, which is going to help you fit in your auras. Right, and then we have a Storm Drinker one here. This is just kind of like a damage one, right? I thought the Leech was kind of important, but it's not super important. We do have enough, what do you call it, recharge to actually sustain our attacks for the most part. And then here we have a one for a shield. There's one setup here you can use for a shield. So if you're using a shield, you want to get one of these with Gladiator's Fortitude, because that gives you 5% increased life. And then Martial Prowess, so you get some accuracy, so 2 of these. And then if you're using a 2-sword setup like we were doing in the video, then you're going to be using a cluster like this one here. So it's got the Insatiable Killer, so you get Frenzy on kills, quite nice for mapping. And then Feed the Fury for a little bit of attack speed, or you can get Martial Prowess over here for accuracy, whichever one you want. All right, so let's go over the Watcher's Eye. Watcher's Eye, basically the mod that I was looking for is the reduced extra damage from crits, and after that you can get some damage mods. The Wrath Pen probably going to be the best, and then after that you probably want to get a maybe attack speed precision or life gain on hit vitality, and that kind of stuff would be very nice. Timeless Jewel, use the Timeless Jewel Calculator tool. And then basically there's 2 good spots here, and over here is another good spot for it. So just look for one here or here with some nice aura effect, or maybe even max chaos res, and then just kind of buy whichever one that you can find. The only thing that you need to note is that it needs to be a Zibakwa, sacrifice in the name of Zibakwa, otherwise you're not going to get the Divine Flesh. For the small clusters, a lot of these are pretty much all 35% increased effect. We need some to get attributes and elemental resistances, so that's what we're using over here. One of them has Chaos Res to help me get some Chaos Res. And then this one here, I found this Megalomaniac with Introspection and Born of Chaos on it, so that's quite nice. It's probably the best. Ideally, you have these in your build. If you don't have this, then what you do is you're going to be using these small clusters over here with 2 passive with Born of Chaos. So that's going to give you the same result, but you're just going to lose out on some aura effect, which is quite nice. I mean, quite a big damage increase. Alright guys, so this is going to be it for the video. Let me know what you think in the comments for the champion build. Do you like it or not? I think this build ended up being pretty cool. I was looking on PoE Ninja, and most of the champion players are still playing Doriani's prototype. Maybe they just don't really have a good solution for defense or for damage, but I think this setup here is actually quite nice, even in like mid-game setups. For your armor stacker, you get your defense, you guys still have pretty nice damage, and can take on most content in the game. But yeah, it's gonna be it for this one, guys. We'll have one more video at the end of the league, or it is pretty much the end of the league for me, but we're gonna go over all of the builds I made, do like a tier list kind of thing, which one I like the best and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that'll be it for this one. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time.